Bruins and Panthers are probably going to meet once again, probably next year in the playoffs. Get ready for another trip down to Sawgrass Mills, Evan. Feels
Yeah. And then also Matt Tkachuk. Matt Tkachuk is another one.
Yeah.
Like, I think he's not on the same level as Bennett, but like fighting Pastrnak. I mean, just
trying to fight Hallmark.
Down.
Trying to fight Hallmark last year.
Yeah, like Tkachuk is on that same track.
Poke the Bear is powered by PrizePicks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network.
And welcome into Poke the Bear, episode 235, presented by PrizePicks. Go use that promo code CLNS to get up to $100 cash back on that first deposit. Going into game one, Connor, of Celtics Mavs on Thursday, there is a square for Jason Tatum over 0.5 points. So all he needs, or more than 0.5 points. So all he needs is 1 point. All he needs is 1 point. You can add it to your squares. Again, that's going into game one. So again, go to PrizePicks, use the promo code CLNS, and we're presented by Game Time. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. You want to go to the Celtics Mavs? You want to maybe travel to Florida or Edmonton for Florida-Edmonton Stanley Cup Final? Lots of fun concerts this summer. Red Sox, all that stuff. Go visit our friends over at Game Time. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. Connor, what is up?
Evan, I'm doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. You were at Patriots, what is it? I almost said dev camp, but OTAs, right? That's what they're called? OTAs?
Yes, organized team activities.
Ooh, organized team activities. Well, that's fun. You get to see Drake May and the new look Patriots, and people forget you're a football guru. You're a football expert. I think people forget that very often, breaking down film.
Yes, absolutely. I have the little I have the John Madden telestrator going through plays, all that stuff. If I did that, I would just do how I usually play Madden. I just do 4 verticals every time. Just 4 lines straight down the field. Like, that's the game plan.
That is, run quick slants, that halfback screen. So many just tried and true great ones. I always liked my receivers cutting. Like, I didn't like the 4 verticals because I would always get it intercepted because I'd pick the word. Like, I'd wait till they got open to throw it. It's always like, just wait till they do a little quick juke, so they get away from the defender. That's. I think I'd be a great quarterback. Just look for when those guys juke. I think it's
just throw to the open guy. That's all it is, right?
It's so easy. Can't believe these guys still throw interceptions. Little bit of news to start off today's show. We're recording this on Tuesday. So NHL.com's Mike Morial reported Devils open to trading number 10 pick in 2024 NHL draft. And they happen to be looking for a goalie. Full comments. Quote, if we feel it helps us now and in the foreseeable future, then yes, I'm listening. Tom Fitzgerald, New Jersey's general manager, told NHL.com on Monday. I haven't gotten anything yet, but the more I talk to teams, I say, listen, I'm open to moving number 10, but it's going to have to be something significant. End quote. And then another quote was, the end of the day, we're in a position now versus 2 years ago when we drafted Simon Nemec, where if we can find the right piece to help us get to where we want to go today, tomorrow, and wherever the controllable future is for the player, great. That's the mindset versus great. We have a top 10 pick, and this kid is going to be fantastic when he's 25 years old. To me, it sounds, he's explicitly saying it. They want to move the pick. And I think they do. Given that comment of hey, we want a guy who's going to help us now, not someone who's going to help us a few years down the road. It's going to be important. And then the goalie part came up. Since being hired as the full-time GM in July 2020, Fitzgerald has seen 12 different goalies play at least one game. 2 have played 80-plus games, and 2 others have totaled at least 40. I could say, hey, quiz, who are the 2 ones that got to 80? And I think it would be a really hard one. Do you know who the 2 are that got to 80?
Blackwood?
Yes, that's one.
Bruins killer Mackenzie Blackwood. And then, Jesus. Dude, who is it?
Vitek Vanacek is the other one.
Yeah. Yikes. Yeah, so, they need a goalie.
Yeah, badly. So he goes on to say, I'm in the goalie market talking to teams, but there's a but. And the but is, how do we want to build our team? We'd like to add up front. We'd like to add on the back end. So what are those pieces going to cost us with the goaltending? What's that going to cost us? Does the number 10 pick get you that type of player that you can add to the group? It's easy to say, go get so-and-so, and then you build from there. Like, go get Linus Ullmark and build from there. But there are some players. He didn't say the Linus Ullmark part. He did not say the Linus Ullmark part. He did say this next part, but there are some guys who have different contracts. So how are those players going to reprice that? There's a lot to it, but yes, the focus is on finding that goaltender. So, I mean, he's open for business. That is as clear as day, open for business as you can be as an NHL general manager. What's your initial reaction to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not particularly surprising, right? I think it was Fitzgerald who, I think after the deadline, was mentioning how he was upset they didn't get a goaltender. He's like, I think his quote is, I'm being extorted, which, like, bro, like, maybe get not a quarterback, maybe get a goaltender to help you out there. Cause that was like the main flaw with that team that, again, had a lot of bad breaks, a lot of injuries, but they are one of many teams that feels like they're on the cusp of being a regular contending team. They're just missing a guy in net, a proven number one player. Linus Ullmark makes a lot of sense there. And we kind of talked about this on Bruins Beat, right, Evan, that you look at this Bruins team, and especially down the middle, like we've talked about Elias Lindholm, we talked about the pipe dream of Draisaitl, but I think you mentioned it, that if you're looking at the best way to get that next franchise player, it's usually going to be, through the draft of hitting on one of these prospects. And if you're a team like the Bruins who have a luxury at a position like goaltender, and you're able to move Ullmark, and you're able to get the number 10 pick out of that, like we've gone through a whole bunch of scenarios already, right? We've gone through like the Marty Necas, we've gone through like the Ottawa Senators with Chikrin and whatever the hell that is. And we looked at, like, let's say this is another third option of the number 10 pick. Like, from where I think we were maybe last offseason, where you're like, all right, maybe like Ullmark, you get like 2 second-round picks and you're happy, to like these being potentially things that you could grab, whether it's an impact forward like Necas or a top 10 pick. That's a good spot to be in if you're the Bruins, right? Because again, like there's other guys that could be dangled out on the market, right? You've got like Saros has been mentioned in rumors. You got Markstrom, and he could be another guy. So Ullmark's not the only guy out there, but you look at how many. I think it's all situational, and how many teams there are that should be contenders that are just missing that one piece in net. There's quite a few of those teams out there. So it seems like this offseason in particular is a good market to be in if you're the Bruins, where you can move a reigning Vezina Trophy winner like Ullmark. And yeah, at number 10, is that someone that's going to help you out next year? No, but like you've got a good piece to add to this team. And I think especially when you look at the draft, yeah, you're not getting Celebrini, but it does seem like it's like Celebrini, then a lot of defensemen. And then like the couple of centers after that are all in that like 8 to 12 range, where you can get a pretty good player that maybe he doesn't help you out in 2024, 25, but make strides and can be kind of like we mentioned like Wyatt Johnston, right? As a guy who is now accelerated his timeline, is helping out an older core in Dallas. If you're able to land a player like that supplements what you have and can be a top 6 center for the long haul, it's making pretty good use of your asset if you're moving a guy like Ullmark.
That's the thing. And I think, you look at, I've said this a couple times, I know you've said it, like a lot of people are saying, oh, trade Ullmark for a pick and an impact player, or just an impact player, because the Bruins need help now. And I agree, the Bruins do need help now. But I think what you're getting in the now is you're getting the cap space to go out and have more flexibility to sign higher end players or more players, or like, and I think if you go out and, one thing this organization needs is an influx of younger, good talent in the prospect pool. I mean, we'll get to this at some point in the future, but the prospect pool is barren after this past year. Guys like Beecher, Lowry, Poitras, Lauko, Prezzo, like Wotherspoon, you want to throw in there. Like, those guys are up. You know what you're going to get out of most of those. Obviously, Poitras, Lowry, Beecher still have, a little bit more to give, a lot more to give in Poitras' case. And same with Lowry. But, like, you need some higher end talent. I mean, Bruins Dev Camp this year, Connor, it's not going to have a lot of high end exciting guys.
Get ready to learn Chris Pelosi, buddy.
That's exactly it. Get ready to learn like Beckett Hendrickson, and that's fine, And again, those guys could develop into phenomenal players. I'm not writing them off. We're not writing them off. But the ceiling on those guys is lower end NHLers. Again, I've not watched a lot of Chris Pelosi. I've not watched a lot of Beckett Hendrickson, so I can't sit here and be like, I know the ins and outs of his game. Now, let me tell you something. If the Bruins go out and draft a kid who was like in prep this past year, whoa, I'll do a whole podcast on that. That's like my one little area of expertise. So I will not shut the hell up about that. But again, at number 10, you're getting a potential NHL high-end player. Like that's what you're getting. And again, I know obviously you can go through every top 10 in history and large majority of them don't pan out because it's a draft and you don't really know until long after. But I think it's worth taking a shot. It's worth the little bit of excitement. It's worth getting a young high-end guy in your system who could make an impact down the road. And good news for the Bruins. There's quite a bit around number 10. And I want to get into that. But first, a quick word from our friends over at PrizePicks.
The finals are right around the corner, and it's time for you to get in on the playoff action and win up to 100 times your cash on PrizePicks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level with the title on the line. With PrizePicks, you can turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. With PrizePicks, you could turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. You can make a PrizePicks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. You just need to pick more or less on 2 to 6 players' stat predictions, and you're locked in. PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Get on the daily action with your friends and become part of the PrizePicks community today. The finals mean more on PrizePicks, and so do the star players. You get boosted payouts on select basketball stars that you won't find anywhere else. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and a huge selection of players and stat types are what makes PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. And with the Celtics season still in full swing, there's plenty of opportunity to participate in PrizePicks. This week on PrizePicks, I'm selecting Jaylen Brown for more than 25 points and Derek White for more than 7 assists. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. Again, use code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. PrizePicks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Now, let's get back to the show.
So I think the interesting thing about that number 10 pick is there are guys around there, centers who are candidates to be around there. Now, again, I'm reading off Corey Pronman of The Athletic, his draft rankings, what he thinks. He's around it all year. He knows it better than most, if not everybody. So again, these are not my own. I don't know these guys. I don't know these players. I didn't watch any of these players this winter. But like, for instance, he has in tier 4 as bubble NHL All-Star and top of the lineup player. Number 6, he has Berkeley Caton from with Spokane in the WHL. His player comp is Logan Cooley. The drawback is he's 5'10", but high-end skater, above average in puck skills, hockey sense, compete and shot. I mean, again, like that's a high-end offensive guy. Tier 5 top of the lineup player, Caden Lindstrom, about 6'4", 210. His comp is big boy. His comp is Chris Kreider. Potentially could end up being on the wing. He's a little more hit or miss. Like, skating is good, shots good, competes high end, but like the puck skills and the hockey sense are I don't know if the Bruins go for that. Some other names, Tija Ginla. Tija Ginla is actually someone that is going to be a high-end first-round pick. His comp is Victor Arvidsson. And then Consta Helenius. His player comp is Max Domi. So he's someone else. He's ranked like 14th. So again, there are guys there. And you're right. The defensemen, it feels like there's going to be Celebrini and then a bunch of defensemen, most likely. But again, I think like I'm if they did Olmark for the number 10 pick straight up, I'm cool with that. What about you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think when you look at just where the expectations were going into last offseason with what you could get for a guy like Olmark to now, again, the primary thing is you're clearing cap space, you're carving out a number 1 spot for Swayman, and then anything you add on top of that is great. Whether that's a impact player or a draft capital like that. And if you're able to add any one of those players for the long haul and kind of replenish your prospect pipeline, because as you said, other than next year, you've got, Lysell, You've got like Merkulov, but then you've got like a lot of guys that probably just need more seasoning. Like there are some guys that can develop into maybe impact players or guys that continue to thrive, but it seems like a gap between those guys and, you know, Jelvik, Pelosi, Hendrickson who need some more time. Like all of a
Puntar.
sudden exactly. Like all of a sudden you add, a player like a Ginla or a Catton or one of those centermans that I think it just, changes some of the complexion of your farm system. If you have a guy that all of a sudden you look at their stats next year and they're in the, the OHL, what have you, and they've got 90 points or 100 points, it feels like you have someone that you can look to the future. And again, like the Bruins are in a good spot with the foundation they have, but like how much better do you feel as a Bruins fan if you look at this team in March and they're in the mix, they've got a good team, maybe they have a guy like Elias Lindholm holding on the fort. Then you look down, at elite prospects and you got a guy putting up triple digits in junior that's going to be here in a year or two. Like just having one of those players just makes your overall outlook of your team that much better, especially if they're able to contribute in another year or two.
Again, I mean, think about it like this, and you hit on it there. If you have Lindholm there, you got Poitras, and you got a guy like, let's say, Berkeley Catton, right? By the way,
Mhm.
not to make you feel old, because I've already felt old looking at these.
I don't like this. I don't like where this is going.
The first year eligibles are late 05s and
Don't like
06
that at all.
birthdays. Can you believe that?
Don't like that at all. These people weren't
Can you
alive to
believe
see the
that?
'05 Red Sox with Tony Graffinino and Jay Payton.
I don't remember that team, so I was
You don't
alive
remember that
for it.
team?
So I don't recall that team.
I think they were just they were hung over the entire year, Evan. That's why
I
they
think they
got
were.
promptly swept by Bobby Jenks and the White Sox.
That's right, and the eventual world champions.
Yes.
But
No one
Manny did
cares.
have
No
that.
one likes the White
Manny
Sox.
didn't Manny have that 2 home run game where he hit a ball like right down the right field line that curved around the pole? It
Yes,
was
I
in
believe
that
so.
series, I
Yeah.
think. I don't know if they
Yep.
won that game or not. But again, I think it opens up opportunities for you. You can still be really good in the short term if you make that trade because you're going to have more cap space. Now, again, if Sweeney can somehow pull off a deal where you get a high end first round pick, whether it's, let's just say with the Devils, pick 10 and a top prospect or a young player with control, like, then do it. My God, like, please. But I think a lot of people are like, oh, would the Devils do number 10 for Olmark straight up? I mean, look at Olmark's contract situation. It's 5.25. It's cheap. If an extension could potentially get done, I think that makes it a lot more palatable. I mean, that's your starting goalie, hopefully, for the next 3 years in a prime contention window. And I think coming off last year, the Devils are a little desperate. Like, last year was a kick in the freaking gut for them, I think, of like, oh my God, we're headed, we're a conference final favorite, and now we're not even making the playoffs. So, again, I think it's an opportunity. And by the way, it'll be fun if the Bruins do get the number 10 pick or any first round pick. What I just did there, reading off of Corey Prodman's athletic rankings, we're gonna do that like every episode of like, all right, let's take a look at
Tell you what, that gives us a couple of weeks of coverage to that. You're right.
It does, which is awesome. It does. I want to get into Matt Poitras. I mentioned him a little bit. And then we're going to have a fun segment at the end about Bruins villains. Because Kyrie Irving's coming to town. Everybody's talking about Boston sports villains. You're working on a piece for Boston.com about the biggest Boston sports villains. So we'll take a look at that in a sec. But first, quick word from our friends over at Game Time.
The NBA Finals are right around the corner, and if you're a Celtics fan, odds are that TD Garden is going to be packed in June as the Celtics go for Banner 18. And if you want to cheer on the C's inside the Garden, you got to go with Game Time tickets. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace that makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. And the best part about Game Time tickets, you can browse through the Game Time app to find great seats at affordable prices for all sorts of in-demand games, concerts, and other events. Want to snag last-minute tickets to a concert? Game Time Tickets has you covered. Maybe a Sunday matinee game at Fenway Park, or one of those spur-of-the-moment Friday night games watching the Sox. And with the Patriots and Bruins season set to get started later on in the fall, you can't go wrong with going to the Game Time app to find tickets ahead of time. It's really that easy, the action. And with flash deals and zone deals available, you can make it to some of the most in-demand games at the last second. With these last-minute deals, you can save up to 60% off buying seats for sporting events, concerts, comedy, theater shows, and a whole lot more. Some of my favorite features of the app include seat views, where you can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, and the lowest price guarantee, or else Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So what are you waiting for? Take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Now, let's get back to the show.
Matt Poitras coming in next year, should be fully healthy. Was a borderline top 6 center this year in his limited time. Scored some really nice goals. What are you expecting out of him next year?
Yeah, he's going to be an interesting case, right? In terms of, is he a guy like Beecher or Lori, where it feels like it's all but a given that he's going to start the year in a carved out role, right? Like I feel like he's the 4C next year. He can build off the strides he made. Lori, where he fits in, it seems like a given. He's going to be in the starting lineup every single game and continue to build off of what he showed, especially in the playoffs. Poitras, it's a little bit interesting, right? Like you look at where he was last year, and there were some ups and downs. He dealt with, the adjustment to the competition, the physicality, coming off of his shoulder injury. I feel like the Bruins might, take maybe the slow and steady approach with him of, unlike last year where it's like the NHL or bust, maybe start the year in Providence, get his feet back under him, showcase his talents there, get healthy, see if that shoulder kind of adjusts and get back into the swing of things. And then again, reevaluate in November and moving forward as to where he is. If he's got 13 points in his first 10 games and is looking like a natural down there, then you've got a good problem on your hands in terms of carving out a spot for him back in the lineup. But yeah, I agree though. There's a lot to be, I think, to take away from last year to be really encouraged by in terms of just how far ahead of schedule he is. And I think we've mentioned this before with looking at Poitras. It's not just like the production or maybe exceeding expectations. It's just, I think, what it can do for a player, especially at his age, of just going through those first kind of growing pains and getting through them, of like the tougher competition, the physicality, the schedule, the routine, all those things, that he's going to be so much better for it this upcoming training camp. And regardless of where he starts the year, to have all that experience under your belt now, it's just going to make him that much of a better player. So I'm not setting like super high expectations of like, if we do our way too early season predictions of like, he's going to have 60 points. Like, no, but I
100
think,
points,
yes, of course.
Calder, everything.
But I mean, you look at, when he was on his game, how good he is in terms of his poise with the puck, playmaking, all those things that he can't really teach. There's a lot to like about how he can build off of that. So where does he fit in October? I think remains to be seen. I think you give him some time to get his feet back under him. But he's a guy that, we're looking at maybe in, March and April before he gets to playoffs. He could be a guy that's every day in the lineup just based on that skill alone.
The way that you and I talked about him last fall, we kept saying, hey, if he forces himself to be here and he plays well enough, great. But if you have to take the cautious approach and send him back to junior, that's fine too. I look at it the same way in this upcoming training camp of, if he is outstanding and you can't keep him out of the NHL lineup, then don't. But if he's fine, but clearly needs a little bit more seasoning in Providence, then that's fine too. You have a third line next year, at least right now. Frederick, Geeky, Brazeau, that's fine. We've talked about this. Like, that's okay. If he forces himself to be up here and it's Frederick, Poitras, and Geeky, then terrific. That's exactly what you want. But again, I think there's no harm in sending him to Providence for a handful of games, a slew of games, a couple months, to get right. Because again, he's coming off a pretty big injury. He's coming off surgery. So again, like I look at that, and you need time to adjust. So again, if he kicks ass in training camp, great. But and again, what did we say last year? I think, did we predict he'd go back to junior? I don't remember. I mean, after a while, it got to the point where it was like, I don't think we ever predicted that. I think I predicted he'd have like 50 points, which was
I think when you look at how good he was during the preseason and all that stuff, it felt like this was a guy who was going to have an absurd breakout year. And again, like, even though he had injuries and he had the ups and downs, like, to go through all those things at 19 to enter a new season where he's still at this age with that level of progression. So it's going to be a great problem to have for the Bruins if he's lights out in the preseason again, because you now have the luxury of taking it easier with him and easing him back into the lineup, or he's a guy that maybe makes it tough to put him down in Providence. And that's the case, you carve out a spot for the 20-year-old playmaking center. I think you make room for where he fits in.
100%. And I also think, we said last year, oh my God, the Bruins got so lucky with this kid. Like, clearly this has been a pick that hit. That's still the case. That's still very much the case. He just was injured last year. Like, there's not much you can do there. Villains. Bruins villains. Do we want to go back and forth? Do we want to rank them? What are you thinking? You're doing the story.
Maybe just do like a back and forth, guys that come to mind. And I'll say that,
It's like Jamie Todd stealing the line where, like, before you can even get the word out, like, Scott Walker, I just like everybody at once.
yeah, exactly. I mean, for me, right, like I won't dive too deep into like there's I think a level between like villains and adversaries, right? Like there's some guys who are just like had your number, or like like I look at like Guy Lafleur and those like Canadians teams where just they kind of kicked your ass quite a bit. Like it's like Derek Jeter. Like, was Derek Jeter did anything that made Red Sox fans outwardly hate him, or just because he was on the Yankees, they were always good. He was one of their better players. Like, it's one of those. But the Bruins sure do have a lot of guys who did quite a bit to piss off their fans, their players. I mean, I think at the top of the list got to be Ulf Samuelsson, right? For
Yeah.
noted cheap shot artist. Cam Neely to this day does not like Ulf Samuelsson, robbing a dominant player of so many prime years off of a cheap shot that he was never the same as a result of it. I feel like that's got to be the most obvious one, right? That even if like, I feel like even though I don't think we were around during that time, you learn about Cam Neely and you see those highlights as a kid, and usually not far from that, whether you're talking to your parents, your relatives, whoever it is that watched the Bruins during that era, mentioning Ulf Samuelsson usually with an F-bomb or something thrown in there is usually what follows with any early discourse about Kim Neely and his career and what could have been. So I think that's the obvious one, right?
I was gonna say, I think that's the big one. I just think in terms of what could have been, you know, uh, Cam Neely's a legend of the franchise, team president. Like, I just think that is on a totally different level. One that comes to mind for me is Matt Cook. I think Matt Cook hit on Mark Savard. You think about what Mark Savard could have been, and I know Matt Hunwick's hit ended up doing it for him, but I don't think that happens without the hit from Cook. Complete cheap shot. Cook is hated by every franchise, even the ones he was on. I mean, in YouTube comments, there'll be like Penguins fans being like, "Yeah, we hate this guy too." Complete dick when it came to the NHL and what his role was. Wasn't an enforcer either. Like, he was just a small rat who was not talented offensively at all. I don't like, I'd have to go back and look at his stats. I don't know why he kept drawing into lineups. Like, there wasn't a fighter
because he would take out the other team's better player.
Exactly. And that is what it ended up becoming. But I just think what he did with that hit, how much of a blindside hit that was. I think he did the same thing to David Booth, like earlier that year, or was that
so? I feel like he had
blanking.
He definitely had like a rap sheet before the Savard hit, right? Like, it wasn't like that was the thing that started off that kind of reputation. That was far from like an outlier in terms of his overall career and what he's done on the ice.
Yeah, no, it wasn't David Booth. That was Mike Richards who blindsided him. That was different. But people forget about Matt Cook, and I always find this kind of funny. Evander Kane started out as a hero in this league because he KO'd Matt Cook. Like, just completely one punch to the face, over, like unconscious on the ice. Like, and that was how things started with Evander Kane. I was like, oh, this guy is going to be a fan favorite forever. Not
Thrasher's legend.
That exactly, Atlanta Thrashers legend. So yeah, Matt Cook to me is definitely a villain.
Yeah, I would say another one that's maybe underrated. Well, maybe not underrated, but one that always people sometimes forget about. Then you mention his name, they're like, "Shit." Scott Walker.
Yes.
Ruined a unbelievable run for that 08-09 Bruins team, where it felt like everything had come together. You had the veterans leading the way. You had a great young core that put it all together with Bergeron and Krejci and all these players. Felt like the stars had finally aligned. It felt like the Bruins
Did
were
they win the
on
President's Trophy that year?
they had 116 points. I'm trying to think if any team beat them. I think they did have the President's Trophy that year.
I'll look it up.
I'm trying to think of what other juggernaut team didn't that beat them for it, but an unbelievable season. But like, yeah, again, like everything had fallen into place, and then that grimy Carolina team that had just a bunch of like solid veteran guys, but like Scott Walker, sucker punches Ward in the face, doesn't get anything really out of it. I think he got fined $2,500, which the gall to get $2,500 as a fine for it.
Ooh.
But you have that, right? The Bruins come back, force a game 7 at home, and then Scott Walker, not top six, dangerous sniper. Scott Walker has this greasy goal that Tim Thomas wants back, immediately leaves the ice in a hurry. And
That
Scott
was the
Walker's the guy
classic
that
Tim
kind of,
Thomas. Just sprint right to the bench.
but to have him be the guy that ends that season after, the Caves committee shouldn't have been playing in, game 6 or game 7 off of, again, sucker punching Aaron Ward right in the face. That one is one that I think drives some Bruins fans crazy. When you look at just how unbelievable that whole year was for that team finally breaking through, finally felt like they had arrived. They had a deep run in front of them. And then Scott Walker's the guy that derails it.
That was wild. Fourth grade Evan was heartbroken over that whole situation. That Bruins team, 116 points. The only team with more was San Jose with 117.
Oh.
So how times have changed.
Yes.
So that's a good one. I'll go with a recent example. Go Sam Bennett. Sam Bennett. I know it just happened. So like, obviously we won't, the effects of it won't be for a while, but knocks Brad Marchand out of a series. Like that is a huge, like sucker punches the captain, does it immediately upon re-entering the series. Sam Bennett was a pest last year too. Finishes every hit, complete wrecking ball on the ice. I gotta go Sam Bennett. I don't think he's like up there yet. I don't think he's in the pantheon of villains, but early candidacy. And you know what? He's gonna be around for a little bit longer. So get used to him. Get used to him.
I mean, I feel like he's kind of in that same mix as like Scott Walker, right? Like had an impact on last year, crushed an unbelievable run, like what happened with Walker in Carolina. But then like this year as well, like punches Marchand, takes him out of a game, then scores the game 4 controversial goal that flips the momentum in that game. And you look at, how the Bruins made the rest of that series pretty competitive after some lopsided losses in games 2 and 3. Like a lot could have changed if you come away with that win in game 4 at TD Garden, right?
100%.
So I think that is, a guy that you could look at that Panthers team and, are they more adversaries? No, like you look at I think they fully embrace that villain role. And as you said, I would not be surprised if I think he deserves a spot on this list, Bennett, and he could bump a little bit more. It feels all but inevitable, regardless of what happens this offseason. Bruins and Panthers are probably going to meet once again, probably next year in the playoffs. Get ready for another trip down to Sawgrass Mills, Evan. Feels
yeah. And then also Matt Tkachuk. Matt Tkachuk is another one.
Yeah.
Like I think he's not on the same level as Bennett, but like fighting Pasternak. I mean,
trying to fight Olmark.
Trying to fight
Olmark last year.
Yeah, like Tkachuk is on that same track. So
yeah. So, I mean, and you got I'd probably round out, again, a lot of ours are more modern ones. I'll throw an honorable mention to Alex Burrows. I feel like you got to throw one player from that 2011 team. Me take your pick. Maxime Lapierre, Roberto Luongo, Kessler, Aaron Rome, obviously. You got to throw someone in there. It feels
I forgot about Aaron Rome, but that ended up kind of helping the Bruins.
Yeah, it kind of galvanized the Bruins, honestly. But
talk about a dumb hit. What a fucking dumb hit. Oh my God.
But I feel like, Burrows for what he did, biting Bergeron, kind of galvanized the team. Everyone wanted to put their hand in Burrows' face the rest of that series. Just feels like a guy, it feels like a guy that was just the poster boy for that team that I feel like when the Bruins advance to the Cup, you're like, all right, like you feel excited as a fan watching that beat the Lightning in an unbelievable game. You're like, all right, Vancouver's up next. They're pretty good. We'll see what happens. Like, it's like when they lost to the Blackhawks in 13. You're like, wow, that was a wagon of a team. It sucks, but what are you going to do? After game 1 of that series against Vancouver, Bruins fans are like, we need to beat the Vancouver Canucks. We cannot have this crew of jabronis beat the Bruins on this stage. So yeah, I think you got to throw someone in from that 2011 team for Vancouver. Maybe it's Kevin Bieksa, who continues to talk about how much he's still not over that series loss. There's a lot of guys on that team, but I'll go with Burrows.
A lot of tools on that team. I'd go with
Yes.
Burrows too. Another honorable mention, PK Subban. I don't think anything directly happened. I know there were some flops. Fought Marchand. Maybe falls more under the Derek Jeter type of like, oh, he just, kind of had your number, was just on the Canadians. But like that 13-14 playoff series, there was a lot of drama. Felt like a lot of drama. Prime PK Subban was so good too. Like prime PK Subban, he scored the overtime winner in Game 7 of that ending your 13-14 year, right? Or am I imagining that?
I believe he definitely scored in that game because that was one where I think going into Game 7, he like declared that they were going to win, right? Or he was going to like quiet the guard. And he said
You know what?
something before it.
Oh, wait, I'm thinking of the
He
goal.
he scored he scored the goal that forced overtime in 2011.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking of that
Yes.
goal. Okay, my apologies.
But I do believe
he's.
I believe. They just won. But
They just
I
spanked,
do. I do think he scored a goal in that 2014 Game 7, I believe. But he was nails that whole series. He's been nails in multiple series against the Bruins. So yeah, that's also a great pick. Of is he more of an antagonist than a villain? Maybe, but like still a guy that gave Bruins fans fits for years. Great player.
Oh yeah. And I cannot believe they traded him. What a horrible decision. I mean, like, what are you doing? But yeah, I don't. Let us know if we're missing anybody, because I don't think we are.
At least out of like the last 10,
Steve
15
Ott
years
from those Dallas
Yeah.
Stars teams. Maybe Steve Ott.
That's right, Jack Edwards. That's right, Jack Edwards. No, Jack Edwards' pick is Steve Kazari, but
That's right, Steve Kazari. Coward. Complete coward. So yeah, those are villains. But yeah, let us know if we're missing anybody.
please
Connor,
send them along.
Yeah, what can the people look forward to from you over at the Globe and Boston.com?
Yeah, well, I've covered every step of the way this offseason, whether it's trade rumors, whether it's maybe some draft projections, if the Bruins all of a sudden have a first-round pick once again, free agency, all that stuff we have you covered over at Boston.com and the Globe. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at Conor Ryan _93.
Go do all that. That has been this week's episode of Poke the Bear, presented by Game Time and Prize Picks. You Poke the Bear listeners, have a great rest of your week.